Okay, guys, so figured I would explain what I've been trying to figure out here. Um, so this is the code for basically the landing page of the React app, right? Um, I made a component called fetch quotes right here. Okay, needs to be. I made it in a separate file, right? So you need to import fetch quotes from the place where I saved the fetch quotes component. I made a folder called components, and the fetch quotes component is in the components folder. Okay, simple enough. Okay, so the code for the fetch quotes component, you have to import React from React. Okay, then you make a class. Every component is either a class or it can be just a function, right? So in this case, it's a class. Initialized it with a state. The state object has a property of quotes, which at the start is an empty array because we want it to be an array of quotes, right? Ultimately, that we can um, click those arrows and move to the next quote, right? So the render method on this class is going to be what actually shows up on the page, right? So just to keep it simple, I just, this is, for now is not really important. You can see here, though, it's just a paragraph with the quote in it, right? But so getting this quote from the API, when you do an API call like this, you're supposed to do it in component did mount. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but that's all the tutorials and stuff always say to do. Something to do, I think, with the DOM being rendered the first time. Like if there's nothing rendered yet to the screen, then this stuff doesn't have anywhere to go because component did mount happens after render. When you go to the URL, things happen in a certain order. Render happens before component did mount. So it gets put on the page. At that first flash through, this is going to be empty. But so component did mount, calls the API using fetch, right? Here's the URL. With limit 5 equal here it means that it's going to take it's going to return an array of 5 quotes. 5 objects, right? Which each contains the quote, the author, and a couple other pieces of information. So you can include, with the fetch, you do the URL, and you give it some other additional information here in this object. You need to give it a header with the token, right? So it knows we are entitled to have that information. So it returns what we asked for, then we turn it into a JSON object. Then we're taking that object and which is an array, I guess, and then set state puts that array into quotes, set state. So we're back up to here. We're filling this empty array, quotes array on the state with this results of this. So now, what happens now? So that's changed. So it re-renders, right? Component did mount. You did something in component when state changes, React automatically runs the render again. Anytime the state changes, React automatically just re-renders the page. So we did set state. It knows something changed. It's going to go back to render and run it again. Now this time when it runs render, this quotes will actually be filled with our 5 items. And okay, so let me back up a little bit. Before, when I had sent that message on Slack before, I was getting some sort of error. The problem I was having was that I was trying to call the first object in the array to get the quote off of it, right? So this.state.quotes is an array, and I'm looking for trying to get the first one, right? The 0 position. But the first time through, like I said, it was empty. So it's calling undefined. It's telling me it's undefined. And I kept having a problem. So I put this in code help on the general Slack channel, and some nice guy helped me out. He said what you need to do is you can do this with an if else statement, but this is the ternary, right? Which says if basically says if this.state.quote 0 exists, true or false, right? If yes, then you're going to give me back what I'm asking for. This.state.quote 0.quote. If it doesn't exist, it's going to give me an empty string. So this way it didn't fail. It's getting something back instead of undefined. It's getting empty string. So when it re-renders when the first time through it renders, it says this does not exist. I'm going to give you an empty string, but I'm not going to fail. The second time through, this quotes is full of stuff, so it's going to give me this.state.quotes the first thing in the first position, and from that the actual quote. And so this is being saved here as quote 1, and then here I'm just inserting that quote 1 on the page. And so the result of that, all of that, is this. Okay. Page. Okay, so I didn't change the stuff that was already there. I just added it to the bottom. So here's the quote, right? And if you look at the console, boy, my computer's slow today. It's giving me a warning, not an error, just saying this. I didn't change this stuff from before. But more importantly, over here, if you have React tools, dev tools, right? Put that in there. It will go through the page, and now with the cool thing about this is you can go, okay, here's my fetch quotes component. It tells you what the state of your fetch quotes component is, right? So like I said before, I initialized it with an empty array, but then it does component did mount, and it's filling up that empty array with this quotes array. Okay, so then I'm getting the thing in the 0 position dot quote, which to the lovers out there. So even though I'm only displaying the first one, we have access to the first 5, or the 5 that we called. So again, like I said, just I'm only displaying one, but in that state object, we have access to 5 more. And obviously we could change that number depending on the way we structure the API call. So right from here, we'll be able to click our next button would be somewhere in this general area, right? You could click the next button, tell it to go to the first position or second position, so on. So any questions, just let me know. Cool. It took me a little while to figure out. Needed some help in the code help. If you're having a problem with that, somebody got on there like within like 2 minutes and helped me out. So That was very cool, very helpful. All right, guys. See you on Slack.